Hi everyone. We're moving now into looking at these things called pedigree charts, and this video is really just an introduction to what these are and kind of how to interpret them and how to draw them. So for this lesson, you've got the single and the double. So this is kind of the worksheet is due on Monday, so you can maybe spend a bit of time on the weekend interviewing family members so you can create your little pedigree chart. But these are basically almost like family trees that chart the genetic history of a family over several generations. So they're usually used to either trace particular traits or quite commonly to trace genetic conditions or diseases. We're just going to really focus today on what the symbols are and how these are created. So this is a very simple version of a pedigree chart. So the symbols are, females are shown by a circle, males are shown by a square, and we're talking here, because we're looking at genetic inheritance, we're talking here about biological females, biological males. If one of the circles or the squares is shaded in, that means that this individual either has the trait that we are tracking or they're affected by whatever condition we're tracking. Okay, it's important to note, I'll just put this here, that you generally only track one particular trait or condition in each pedigree chart, because obviously it's going to be different for each different trait. It's unlikely that all individuals are going to have the same inheritance for their hair color and whether or not they carry an allele for a particular disease. So yeah, shaded in means that they are affected by that condition or they have the trait. If it's not shaded, that means they do not have whatever trait we're tracking or they're not affected by the condition. And then sometimes you'll see one like this where it's half shaded in. That means that a person is a carrier, which is generally the term we use if we're talking about a disease, or if we're talking about a trait, they are heterozygous for a recessive trait. Okay, so I'm just going to use an example here. Let's say this is a recessive trait. Let's say we're talking about blue eyes. And both of these individuals, so this person has blue eyes, that's the trait we're looking at. Both of these individuals, because they're fully shaded in, so they're not shaded at all, they are dominant, they don't have the allele, whereas this person is a carrier, or they are heterozygous, they're recessive for that. Now, you might be looking at this and go, well, that's not possible in this instance because one of these parents would have to be a carrier. You are correct. But basically, that's just what we mean by someone being a carrier. It's not, if a trait was dominant, if we were tracking a dominant trait or a dominant condition, there's no such thing as a carrier, because if the condition was dominant and a person was heterozygous and only had one of those alleles, they'd be fully coloured in because they have the condition or they have the trait. All right, a little bit more on some of the numbers in here. So down the left, and basically we're going from oldest to youngest. These numbers here are the generation number, okay? And they are written in Roman numerals. So if you don't know your Roman numerals, you don't have to do too many in this. You're not going to be looking at pedigrees that go beyond 5 probably, but you use Roman numerals for the generation numbers. You'll see that there's these horizontal lines between people. That line indicates, it's called the marriage line, but obviously a couple does not need to be married to have children. So I don't like calling it that. That's technically what it's called, but that's basically that kind of partnership line that goes horizontally between two individuals. Then these vertical lines are the reproduction line. Okay, so if we were kind of looking at here, let's say you've got a male and a female that are married or have had kids, whatever, they've got 3 children here. Okay, so all the ones that come directly off them are their children. Okay, so they had a daughter, a son, and another son. And then this son here, number 3, this son has also got a partner or is married to a female, and they have a son. Okay, so when people get confused with this, they're often trying to, connect all of the lines together. Just keep in mind, you've got to have one line for direct descendants, and then horizontal lines would indicate people that have kind of married into that family. All right, the other numbers that we have here, and I'm just going to get rid of some of these annotations because they are a bit messy. The other numbers that we have here are for the individuals. Okay, so you've got generation 1, individual 1. Okay, so you could actually write that as that. Okay, here we've got generation 1, individual 2. They would be that. You go from left to right with the individual numbers, and generally that goes from oldest to youngest, but don't stress too much about that. Let's move on now to looking at generation 2. The numbering starts again. So we don't move on to person 3 because we had 1 and 2 up here. This is now generation 2, person 1. Generation 2, person 2. Generation 2, person 3. Okay. If people kind of marry into a family or more children are had, then obviously you would add in more individuals there. There are a few other symbols that haven't been used in the ones before. So if you've got non-identical twins, they are shown like this. So they basically come off from one line. Here we've got male-female twins that are non-identical. If they are identical twins, firstly, they would have to be the same sex because they are identical, and then they would have a line between them as well. There is also a way of marking if someone is deceased. It's not always done, so a lot of pedigrees you will look at won't have that at all, but a line through a person indicates that that person is deceased. And then there is a way also of showing if someone is kind of divorced or separated. This is, generally the case if, let's say, you had this this female here that was married to someone and they had a daughter, and now she is divorced to that person, married to someone else, and has 2 kids. You would be able to show that, without it looking like she's married to 2 people. Okay, so there's some other symbols that you can include. All right, I'm going to try and attempt to draw one of these on here. I don't know how it's going to work with my trackpad, but we will give it a go because I do want you to practice drawing these, and it is a bit of fun. So we've got Stephen is married to Susan. For this, we're not going to track any traits. It's really just practicing using those these symbols. Now, it's always good to read through it or plan one of these because there's a little bit going on here. We've got 4 children, and then when you look at the 4 children, many of those children are married and have children of their own as well. So I'm going to draw quite a long line here. Okay, so there's 4 children. The first one is Cormac, who is a male. Okay, then they have a daughter, a female, whose name is Gronya. Then they have another daughter, a female. Oh, I've done these the wrong way around. I've already gotten this wrong. They have another daughter, Siobhan, and then they have another daughter, Mairead. I wonder who that could be. So Cormac, so starting at the first child in this generation, Cormac and his partner Katrina, have a daughter. Okay, so we can draw that in there. Then Gronya, which is this daughter here, is married to Trent. Okay, so we're going to put him there. They have 2 sons and a daughter. Son, daughter. And then Siobhan, which is the next daughter, has 1 son with her ex-husband. Okay, so we're going to draw him in here and do the line. They're not together anymore, but they did have a son. So we're going to put him in there. And then she is now with her new partner, and they have 3 sons. Okay, and Mairead is not married and does not have any children, so she will just be there like that. Okay, then we'd go in and put in our generation numbers. So we've got the parental generation, we've got the kids, and then we've got this grandchild generation. And then we could go in and label each of the individuals through these. Okay, like I said, it doesn't matter too much if you've got them in age order, especially when you're adding in things like partners, but just make sure you start the numbering again. And in case you haven't figured it out, there is my family history and my 6 nephews and 1 niece. I am going to get you to have a go at doing one of these yourself. There's a few kind of little practice ones in the Google Doc that I have included for you to start with. But what I want you to do is like a bit of an assignment is to create your family pedigree chart. You don't need to track a particular trait or condition, so you're not going to need to shade it. But the one I've just done is just my immediate family. What I would actually like you to do is to track an entire side of your family. So have a think, and like I said, it might be a little bit of planning involved. Have a think about either your mother's side, so tracing back to your mother's parents, or to your father's side, to your father's parents, and trace that one line. So you would start with the generation 1 would be your grandparents on one side, okay? If you have a very small family, so let's say you don't have many aunties and uncles, you know, you might only have, say, 1 on each side or none on each side, then I would like you to track both sides. So in your first generation, you would have, you know, your grandparents on your mother's side and on your father's side. Okay, so there might be a little bit of planning involved in this. It's not like a graded assignment or anything, but these things can be, you know, quite fun to do. You might need to double check with your parents, you know, if you can't remember all the cousins and aunties and uncles and things. And then the last thing, obviously, is if you have nieces or nephews, so if any of your siblings have children, then they're actually going to be in the generation below you. So if your generation is the youngest in your family, so you and your cousins are the youngest, you'll be the bottom generation. But I'm sure some of you have nieces or nephews, which means that they will be the generation below you. Okay, so this part is due at the end of Monday's lesson. At least today, make sure you have a go at, you know, just those general questions, and then, you know, you can submit the pedigree once you've done it. I would absolutely be doing this on a piece of paper, taking a photo and uploading it into the Google Doc. All right, thank you.